back, children. Now we are here with the next chapter, Heredity, and let's discuss all the possible answers of this chapter. Let us get into the video. Yes, children, we'll start with the chapter Heredity. We'll have a quick revision of this chapter. In the first paragraph, the possible question from this part is an assertion reasoning or can be an MCQ. Look here, the number of successful variations are maximized by the process of sexual reproduction. So, quite often asked question is like, which of the method of reproduction will lead to evolution? Is that sexual or asexual reproduction? Okay. So always sexual reproduction will improve the chances of evolution and chances of variation. Now this part, accumulation of variation during reproduction. So you should always keep in mind that the variation is not happening within a generation or two generations. It happens, slight variations happen for generations after generations, and all those variations get accumulated. So that concept is made clear here. In one of the question paper, I saw the question like they have given this representation and asked you to identify if it is a sexual or asexual reproduction. So how will you find it? It is obvious that one parent is splitting into two. So one parent involved in reproduction, that is asexual reproduction. So this is asexual reproduction, okay? And in this part, they have clearly mentioned that it is an asexual reproduction here in the descriptive part. But if only the diagram is given, you may get confused. So it was a question of that kind. Only the diagram was given and children were asked to identify if it is a sexual or asexual reproduction. And you can see slight variations happening after each generation. So this is the first generation. Slight variation has happened here as well as here. And when coming to the next generation, you can see those variations which happened in the first generation got accumulated. And then new variations have evolved and have come up. And here also the first variation is accumulated, is carried to the next generation along with the new variation. So this is how the accumulation of variation happens generation after generation, which lead to evolution. Okay. Now, so as I said here, to identify if it is a sexual or asexual reproduction, that's one of the question. Then, only minor differences between them can be generated due to small inaccuracies in DNA copying, that is during asexual reproduction, okay? Because in asexual reproduction, there is no fusion or mixing up. Here there is only DNA copying, so minor inaccuracies in the DNA copying may lead to slight variations in the case of asexual reproduction. Previously, in the previous chapter, how do organisms reproduce, when we said that the differences between sexual and asexual reproduction, variations occur in sexual reproduction, we emphasize there. But you understand, you must keep in your mind that variations do occur during asexual reproduction too. And how do they occur and how that variation is possible there? Due to the small inaccuracies in DNA copying. Okay, hope you understood this part. Then in sexual reproduction, even greater diversity will be generated. That is, more variations or more changes are made possible in sexual reproduction because there is a mixing of two different set of chromosomes. Fine. Now, this is yet another question. Do all these variations in a species have equal chances of survival in the environment in which they find themselves? So the answer follows there itself. Obviously, no. All variations cannot be positive. So I think the same kind of question we have discussed in the previous chapter too. Depending on the nature of variations, different individuals would have different kind of advantages. So one of the examples we quoted in the last chapter was the population of bacteria living in a temperate water zone, and the changes happening there due to global warming affects their population. That's the example we learned. So bacteria that can withstand heat will survive better in a heat wave. Selection of variants by the environmental factors forms the basis for evolutionary process. So environment do select which variant need to survive and which variant will be wiped off. Clear? Now there is one of the textual question based on this figure. if a trait A exists in 10% population of an asexually reproducing species and a trait B exists in 60%, which trait have likely to have arisen earlier? Obviously it is option the trait B, because it is found in around 60% of the population. So maximum number of generations that trait is seen. If a trait is seen lately, recently, so that recent trait is which is recently formed one. And if you find a trait in many generations, that is the one which have arisen earlier. Okay, so 60% if you find a trait in a population and that trait is supposed to have arisen earlier, and if you see few organisms showing a trait, you can assume that that trait has recently formed or recently arisen. Clear? So this is one of the question. This question is also found many times in a paper. Then coming to heredity, remember here they have mentioned inherited traits. So from this chapter a portion called evolution has been deleted for you, but in that part evolution they say about acquired traits, but still there are chances for you to get questions based on the differentiation between inherited traits and acquired traits, because the word inherited traits written here, CBSE expects you to know about this acquired traits too. So differentiation between inherited traits and acquired traits is a possible question. You can never claim that this is a out of syllabus portion. No, if you know about inherited traits, you must know about acquired traits. Inherited traits are the traits which you get inherited generation after generation, and acquired trait is the one which you receive during your lifetime. A very simple example of acquired trait is a rat whose tail got amputated. So that is acquired trait. That trait shall not be inherited to the next generation. Whereas any traits which we receive from our parents, parental characters we receive, there is a chance of inheritance of that one. Okay, so you have to develop answer on that basis. And this earlobe question, so here they have shown the free earlobe and attached earlobe. So in the sample paper also you might have seen question based on this earlobe, but it is not from this part. After learning the whole chapter completely, you should know to interpret the results of a cross between a parent having free or attached earlobe. Clear? So we will see how to interpret those things. And now coming to the inheritance. So Mendel's contribution of inheritance. See, this can be a justification question, like for each trait there will be two versions in each child. So justify. Here, because we get a set of traits from our mother and a set of traits from our father, paternal and maternal DNA. So we will be getting two versions. Clear? Then father of genetics, there can be a question, but it is actually a very simple question, so it can or cannot be asked. Now dominant and recessive traits which Mendel studied. 3 traits, 3 characters are given. So you must know the difference between character and trait. So this character is shape, and the trait or the choices in that includes round and wrinkle. So these are traits and shape is the character. Similarly, height, a character has got 2 traits, tall and short. Color, character has got 2 traits, white and violet. So you should know the difference between character and a trait. Here, this round, tall and white are supposed to be the dominant traits, and wrinkled, short or dwarf and violet are supposed to be the recessive traits. And you should know that the traits which appear in all the generations, we call it as dominant traits, and the traits which do not appear in the first generation and appear in the following generation are called as the recessive traits. Clear? And this law or this principle is stated as a law by Mendel named as law of dominance. Okay, So in this chapter, you'll be learning only two major cross conducted by Mendel. One is monohybrid cross and the other one is dihybrid cross. So I have mentioned the monohybrid cross here for your clarification. Monohybrid cross, whenever you write a cross, you must mention all these things like parent, gamete, F1 generation, and that F1 generation is selved, and again gametes have to be encircled. Always I suggest you to write the F2 generation in a checkerboard, even though it is a monohybrid cross. Some of the kids may think that making a cross like this would be easy. Yes, it is easy, but it's confusing too. Some of you may get confused in that. So always go for this checkerboard. Checkerboard is a clear way of getting the offspring, okay? And then phenotypic and genotypic ratio. Remember, there is also a confusion. What is this phenotypic and genotypic ratio? Children usually get confused with it. Phenotypic means the external morphology, like how the characters we write, is it a tall one, is it a dark one, is it white colored or yellow colored or green colored or violet colored. That characters or the traits which we write, how many of that is phenotypic ratio. And genotype, gene, it always goes with the gene, that is the alphabets, okay? So keep that in your mind. Whenever you represent the number of alphabets, the alphabetic combinations, it is genotypic ratio. So here we have both capital letters, okay? That's one capital and one small letter. That combination we get 2, and both small letters we get 1 combination. So the genotypic ratio is 1:2:1. So what I said now is to the children who always gets confused with this phenotypic and genotypic ratio. So this is monohybrid cross and this is dihybrid cross. So in this text, when we look at the monohybrid cross, we will be able to identify, okay, this is monohybrid and this is dihybrid. But in a question paper, how will you identify that if it is a monohybrid or a dihybrid cross? If in the cross you have 2 characters, for example, tall, white, a tall plant with white flowers. So it has 2 characters, children, not 2 traits. Tallness, it's a character, it's a trait based on height, and white, it's a trait based on color. So 2 characters are taken here. So when 2 characters are taken, for this tall you will be writing using 2 alphabets, and for this white you will be writing 2 alphabets, okay? So that's how you have to identify if it is a monohybrid or a dihybrid cross. If 2 different characters are asked, combined and asked. Or in simple words, if you say, if you have 4 alphabets there, then it is a dihybrid cross, okay? 4 alphabets combined, then it is a dihybrid cross. Now coming to this cross is very important. They will be asking you to identify the dominant trait in this. So which is the recessive trait here. So this trait is found or expressed in all generations. This is parental generation, this is F1 generation, this is F2 generation. So all the 3 generations, this color, violet color, is exhibited or expressed. So it is a dominant character, whereas this white color is expressed in the parental generation and you cannot find it in the F1 generation, but it reappears in the F2 generation. So that is a recessive trait. Clear? So maybe this example or some other examples can be asked as a question to identify the dominant or recessive trait. Okay, now dihybrid cross I have not written because they have clearly mentioned the dihybrid cross here. And whenever even you write the dihybrid cross, you should mention the parents here, gametes here, F1 generation here, then the selfing of F1 generation and the F2 generation. So that's how you have to mention. Clear? Now the phenotypic ratio of dihybrid cross, okay? In dihybrid cross you are learning only the phenotypic ratio, 9:3:3:1. So 9 round yellow, 3 round green, 3 wrinkled yellow and 3 wrinkled green here. Now you have to remember here the parental combination which we have considered here are round green and wrinkled yellow. Look at the F2 generation offspring, round green round yellow, wrinkled yellow and wrinkled green. You have two new combinations here. So what were the parental combination? Round green and wrinkled yellow. Round green and wrinkled yellow were the parental combination, and the round yellow and wrinkled green are the new combinations which you have got during the dihybrid cross. Okay, F2 generation of dihybrid cross. Now next possible question based on this are the three laws based on that, laws of inheritance. Mendel have we are learning only two cross of Mendel here. Mendelian, only two Mendelian crosses we are learning here, that is monohybrid cross with one character, two traits, and dihybrid cross with two characters. Remember, two characters, so one character carrying two traits. So if it is two character, you will have four traits. Okay, now in this dihybrid cross, so as a result of monohybrid cross, law of dominance and law of segregation, this both laws have been stated based on the monohybrid cross, and law of independent assortment is been stated based on the based on the dihybrid cross. Okay, why I say this? Because see, look at the question here. How do Mendel's experiments show that traits may be dominant or recessive? So which cross will you write and what will you write actually? So you may get confused. So if it is based on law of dominance, then you have to explain, need not think, you have to explain the monohybrid cross. If they ask about the inherited independently, that is the term independent assortment or inherited independently, if that term comes, you have to explain the dihybrid cross, because after the dihybrid cross, Mendel has formulated or stated this law of independent assortment. Now let's have a check into the laws of inheritance. We have three laws: law of dominance, law of segregation and law of independent assortment. In law of dominance, Mendel states that the trait which appears in all the three generations, like parental generation it's there, F1 generation it's there, and F2 generation in there. All the three generations, if the traits appear, then we call it as a dominant trait, and the trait which appears in the parental generation, not in F1 generation, and then reappears in the F2 generation, we call it as a recessive trait. Another way of saying this is the trait which appears in both homozygous and heterozygous conditions. The term homozygous and heterozygous is important. If you are considering the tallness and the darkness, so these are the two alleles which we take here. If both the letters, both the alphabets are of uppercase or capital, then we call it as homozygous. And if both the letters are of small letters, of small case letter, then again it is homozygous. If one letter is capital and the other is small, we call it as heterozygous. So this is the easy way for you to keep that in mind. Okay, so the dominant trait will appear both in homozygous as well as heterozygous, because if you find a letter capital, then you can confirm that that is the trait. So here the capital letter refers to tallness. So T here, again that capital T here, so definitely this is a tall one. But in the case of recessiveness, it will appear only in the homozygous condition. If one capital and one small letter come, and though that small letter is of shortness, it cannot appear because this is dominant. This covers the other one. Okay, this dominates the other one. So that is also another definition to talk about dominant and recessive one. Then law of segregation. Law of segregation says that the gametes segregate, comes out during the gamete formation. The alleles comes out during the gamete formation. You can see here two alphabets we write, capital T and capital T. But during gamete formation we pick only one here. And similarly here two alphabets we pick only one here. Look at the dihybrid graph. Here four alphabets here, R, R and Y, Y. During gamete formation we pick only two from this. How do we pick? This is a set of combination and this is a set of combination, right? We pick like this: R into Y, R into Y, and small r into this Y and small r into this Y. So that's how we pick. Okay, so the gametes formed here are one from this and one from the other one. Again one from this and one from the other one. then one from the first set and the one from the second set. Again one from the first set, one from the second set. This is how we pick the gametes. Okay, so the alleles separate or segregate during gamete formation, and so we call it as a law of segregation. And now law of independent assortment. You can see here this round trait in the parental generation, it went along with the green one. I'll erase it so that it not be congested. Okay, now you can see here this round goes with green. Round shape goes with green and wrinkle shape goes with yellow. This is how we selected the parents. But during the F2 generation, look at the offspring formed. It is not like round always went with green only, round went with yellow also. So the pair of alleles can assort independently. It need not stick to the parental combination. It can assort independently to form various combinations. Clear? So if the term assorting independently comes, then remember that it is dihybrid cross. You can explain the dihybrid cross. Hope I'm clear. Hope I'm clear. And now here this question we have already discussed in how do organisms reproduce, like maintaining the number of chromosomes. The same question asked here, but the terms may differ because in that chapter we did not talk anything about chromosomes. Here we talk about chromosomes. Don't worry, you can write the same answer which we have learned in reproduction chapter if the question is asked, like how the number of chromosome is maintained or the stability of DNA of the species. You can write the same answer which we have learned the last chapter, but the term meiosis is important. That is, half the number of chromosome is being transferred to the next project, transferred to the gametes. Now coming to sex determination, here three types of sex determination they discuss. One is the sex is not genetically determined. In some of the organisms, sex is not genetically determined. In that, one can be based on environmental cues. Examples are important, few reptiles. Then the other one, in snails, individuals can change sex. So these two are the categories coming under sex is not genetically determined. Okay, and in human beings, the sex is determined by the chromosomes or genetically determined. The question can be asked like this: 50% of probability of getting boy or girl, and how is sex determined, or any means. Let's check the question asked here. Yeah, how is the sex of the child determined in human beings? Yeah. Or sometimes they'll give you a case and they'll say you a story and later they ask the sex determination. So you should understand that it is about sex determination and right. Okay, and then yeah, this chapter has only these many questions. Then coming to one more question asked here, like a man with blood group A and blood group B. This question is totally based on homozygosity and heterozygosity. Though it is not mentioned here in the content, we'll have a look at the genetic combination of blood group inheritance. See, in different schools, this genetic combination might be represented in different letters, but I have taken this letter. I hope you will be able to follow this. If a person is having A group, he or she can have either of this type, that is both dominant and one recessive. Okay, homozygous IAIA and heterozygous, that is one dominant and one recessive. And you know, if one dominant is present, that trait will be expressed. So it is A group. Similarly, B group, two alphabets or two capital alphabets. So both dominant and one recessive, B group. But AB group has only one way of combination, that is 1A and 1B both in capital. And this one is O group. So O group always have recessive one. Okay, homozygous. You can see both the letters are same, so it is homozygous. And this is homozygous and this is heterozygous. This is an exception form. Okay. So here the question they have asked is a man with blood group A. So blood group A, I have mentioned here we have two combinations. It can be either IA or IA and recessive I. So it is not mentioned here. They have simply said as blood group A marries a woman with blood group O. O is obvious. And their daughter has blood group O. Daughter also got blood group O, first generation. Okay. Now, is this information enough to tell you about the traits of A or O is dominant or recessive? No. It is not enough, because we have to mention the genotype of parents. Only then we will get to know if they are homozygous or heterozygous. Only if we get to know the homozygosity or heterozygosity of the parents, we could confirm which one is dominant and which one is recessive. Clear? Now coming to this fill-up question. Look at this question. A Mentium experiment consisted of breeding tall pea plants bearing violet flowers. Don't look at the option. Look at the question. If the question comes, is carrying two characters here, tallness, height, and violet color. So two characters are mentioned or represented here. So it is a dihybrid cross. This is how you have to identify if it is a monohybrid or a dihybrid cross. Okay. Now, with short pea plant bearing white flowers. The progeny all bore white flowers, but almost half of them were short. So how will you suggest the genetic makeup? Here they have given you the options, but still, how will you find? Tall pea plant. We know. Tall pea plant, capital T, capital T. Violet flowers. So here, dominant letter is represented as W. So we will go for W. We know violet is dominant, right? So W we took. And let's see, short pea plant bearing white flowers. So let's take like this. Conventionally, we do this. Tall, white. The progeny all bore violet flowers. Yes. Capital T, capital T, capital T, small t, capital W, small w. Okay. So that's how our mind works. Fine. Capital T, small t, capital W, small w. But almost half of them were short. Here we got as tall. So there should be short ones too. If there should be short ones, then here there should be a change. Okay, so this is not an issue. Let it be there, because they have all said that all bore violet flowers. So okay, let it be WW, capital. But short ones were there. So only if both parents have short alleles, the offspring will get short. If only one parent has short allele, then there is no chance, because the dominant one will suppress its character. So the parental combination shall be this. So both parents will have this T. That's why the next generation got the short one. Clear? So this is how you must think. Then again this one, light eye colored, parents having light eye colored. The children having light colored eyes likely to have parents with light colored eyes. No way we could mention that the eye color trait is dominant or recessive here, right? Here the homozygosity or heterozygosity is not mentioned. Only if the genotype is given, we'll get to know if it is homozygous or heterozygous. Only then we can find which one is dominant and which one is recessive. Okay. Now, the next one. How is the equal genetic contribution of male and female parents ensured in the progeny? How? Equal genetic contribution, that is equal number of chromosome. We have said that it should undergo meiosis. The number of chromosome is maintained. Okay. So that is a question. Equal genetic contribution of male and female parents ensured in the progeny. Clear? So I hope this part is clear. Go through it. Understand the concept and try to solve more questions. Rather than learning the theory part from this, try to solve more and more questions, sample questions of this part, sample questions of the cross. Try to understand what kind of question they mean. Got it? Okay, children. Anyway, all the best. If you have any doubts, you can mention in the comment too.